Middle East, some 3,000 years ago, a region that even then faced violence and war. In the mountains to the northeast of the Dead Sea, a soldier prepares to attack. This is Joshua, successor to the great leader Moses, and one of the Bible's most famous warriors. From here, Joshua looks west, across the Jordan Valley to the Promised Land. This was where his ancestor Abraham once lived, and Joshua believes he too must settle. But there's a problem. The land is already occupied by local people known as Canaanites. Joshua will have to fight for it. He's not alone. He leads some 150,000 people, children of the Hebrew slaves who fled bondage in Egypt. They've spent 40 years trekking through the desert. Now they are preparing for war. And their first target? The Canaanite stronghold of Jericho. This is a defining moment in the story of ancient Israel, according to Hebrew Bible scholar Rachel Haverlock.
This is really a story about beginnings, about the origins of a nation. And this is, in many ways, really the birth story of ancient Israel.
And the Battle of Jericho is just the beginning. The start of a holy war in which Joshua and the Israelites rapidly defeat the Canaanites and put them to the sword. The story is shocking and not yet over. Joshua's war is still being waged today.
You've got the Palestinians saying they're descendants of the Canaanites. You have the Israelis saying that they're the descendants of the Israelites. And it's ongoing. They're both trying to claim the same land. So what happened 3,000 years ago is basically still going today.
But if Joshua did cleanse Canaan of its inhabitants and occupy their land, surely he must have left some evidence behind. In fact, there's surprisingly little proof. No archaeological evidence confirming Joshua's existence has ever been found. All we have is the Bible and the book that bears Joshua's name. But that was written down around 500 BC, some 1,000 years after Joshua's conquest could have happened. Despite this, surprisingly few scholars dismissed the story as fiction. Many believe it could be based on fact.
As in most of these stories, there's a kernel of truth at the bottom of it, around which everything else is wrapped.
Just what the truth is behind Joshua's conquest of Canaan has become one of the biggest puzzles of ancient history. And the quest for the answer, a detective story of epic proportions. It has intrigued scholars for decades, drawing many of them here, to the site of Joshua's first battle. This is modern Jericho, an oasis town in the Jordan Valley. Archaeologist Bill Deaver is an expert on the history of the area.
Jericho is a unique site. It's the most important site anywhere south of the Sea of Galilee in the Jordan Valley. Its history is due to the fact that there's a source of water.
The spring that supplies that water still serves the people of Jericho today. Next to the spring is what looks like a small hill, but is something very different. It's an occupation mound, or tell, where the inhabitants of ancient Jericho built their cities, one on top of each other, for centuries. Perhaps one could be Joshua's Jericho. Among the first archaeologists to try and find out was John Garstang, a professor from Liverpool University. His original field reports have been conserved by museum curator Felicity Cobbing.
These photographs were taken from 1931 up to 1936.
Garstang's pictures document an amazing discovery.
What Garstang found that he believed was connected directly to the biblical story of Joshua's conquest of Jericho were two strong defensive walls running in parallel on the crest of the hill of Jericho. Mud brick, very, very deep, and evidently very strong.
Using evidence from pottery fragments, Garstang dated these mud brick walls to 1400 BC, exactly when the Bible suggests the Battle of Jericho took place. What's more, the scribes who wrote the story claimed the city Joshua attacked was heavily fortified. And this is just what Garstang found. He discovered the mud brick walls had been built on top of earlier stone fortifications.
You see here what is very typical of a Middle Bronze Age fortified system, with a retaining wall that basically helped to hold in the sides of the tell.
That wall stood at least 15 feet high. On top of it was a first mud brick rampart. Then a steep slope plastered with lime. And finally, the main mud brick walls. 6 feet thick and at least 15 feet high. To an invading army, ancient Jericho must have been a daunting sight, looming at least 50 feet above the valley floor. Here, it seems, Garstang had indeed discovered the city described in the Bible.
Garstang discovered, or thought he had discovered, the very walls that Joshua brought tumbling down, and that's what made headlines.
So archaeological evidence does suggest the story is no mere myth. But that's not all. There are clues in the Bible itself. The book of Joshua contains a credible account of an ancient battle, according to archaeologist and military historian Eric Klein.
In terms of the story, it's completely plausible that Joshua would want to attack Jericho. The fact that Jericho was an oasis would have made it extremely valuable. Food, water, supplies. Also, it's on the way to the Central Highlands. If you want to go that route, you must attack Jericho. There's no way around it.
And it's not just the battlefield that's convincing. It's how Joshua commanded the battle.
From the text, Joshua seems to be an excellent military leader. He's a very good general. I would compare him to Patton or to Montgomery.
Like those Second World War generals, the story records that Joshua based his strategy on a key ingredient: military intelligence. According to the Bible, Joshua sent Israelite spies to scout out the city. His soldiers infiltrated Jericho successfully, but then did something unexpected.
Our very hardworking spies go immediately to an inn that's run by a prostitute.
This may not be so strange. Ancient inscriptions reveal that brothels were the boarding houses of the ancient world. They were the ideal place to blend in and gather information about the enemy.
Who better to go to? A prostitute or a hostess? They found out very quickly what they needed to know.
So far, the Israelites' actions sound plausible. Jericho was a strategic target, and using spies, a textbook tactic. But what about the people those spies saw inside? Given the size of ancient Jericho, there were probably 1,200 inhabitants, men, women, and children. The story calls Canaanites. Here again, the Bible is in line with archaeological finds. While digging on the outskirts of Jericho, excavators found something extraordinary.